The Huberman Lab Podcast number 2, Master Your Sleep and Be More Alert When Awake. Let's summarize it.
Disclaimer, Andrew Huberman is a professor, not a doctor. He does not prescribe anything. Talk to a medical professional before applying his tools.
There will be questions, caveats, and an important announcement at the end of this video. The topic of this podcast is sleep, why it's beneficial, and how to get better at it, as well as how to get more focused and alert during wakefulness. Sleep is a period in which we are unconscious. It resets our ability to be alert, focused, and emotionally stable when awake. There are two key factors that determine our quality of sleep and wakefulness. One, the chemical aspect, adenosine. Adenosine is a molecule in the nervous system and body that builds up while we are awake. The longer you are awake, the more adenosine builds up, creating a sleep hunger. Now, for anyone who has pulled an all-nighter, you may notice that when the morning comes around, you experience an increase in energy and alertness, despite having so much adenosine built up. This is due to our second factor, which is the circadian clock. The circadian clock exists in every animal that we know of. It determines when we want to be sleepy and when we want to be awake. Most people wake up around when the sun rises. When this happens, a pulse of the hormones cortisol and epinephrine are released from the adrenal glands that make you feel awake. Cortisol may commonly be associated with stress levels, but it's actually healthy and important to have this cortisol pulse happen all at once and early in the day. Once this pulse occurs, a timer is now set in the body and nervous system for when melatonin will be secreted from the pineal gland in the brain. The pineal gland is the only organ that releases melatonin, which lets us fall asleep. The rhythm of cortisol and melatonin is endogenous, which means it's happening all the time without any external input. Our goal then is to be able to trigger our clock's timer to begin at the right time for us. How can we do this? Well, the number one way and the scientifically proven most important factor is sunlight. Seeing the great biological benefits of good, consistent sleep is a matter of trying to provide your circadian clock with consistent, powerful light anchors so your cortisol, melatonin, and other factors are timed regularly. The first light anchor is morning sunlight. Now, the cells in your eyes don't know what sunlight is. However, when the sun is rising, it's at a low solar angle. Here, the quality is such that it has the power to trigger your cortisol pulse and thereby your timer. The second anchor is sunset. Viewing the sunset during low solar angle is going to allow neurons in your eye to signal the clock that it's the end of the day. This will help protect the body against the negative effects of viewing bright lights later in the day. So light can be great until it isn't. See, the longer you've been awake, the more sensitive you become to light, to the point where late in the day, even a phone screen can start to trigger your central clock and make you feel as though you want to stay awake. For that reason, it's important that we try to get as much light as safely possible in the early part of the day and as little light as possible later in the day, say after 8 p.m. Certainly, there should be no bright lights viewed between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. This isn't a one strike you're out problem, but it is a problem if done consistently. A quick word on drugs and supplements. Firstly, anything you take can and will affect your circadian rhythm. The two main ones that Huberman mentions, however, are magnesium threonate, which increases certain neurotransmitters to help turn off DPO analyses, and theanine. It's recommended to start with the light behavior first and certainly talk with a medical professional before implementing any drugs or supplements to help you fall asleep. Questions and caveats. Should you take melatonin? Huberman's recommendation is, except in rare cases, no. Melatonin has a secondary function to suppress the onset of puberty. In kids, melatonin is released chronically throughout the day and night to suppress some other brain functions. Now, if you've already gone through puberty, it can still have impacts on other hormone systems in your body. Melatonin also helps to fall asleep, but not to stay asleep. Many people who take it find that they wake up 3 to 5 hours later, unable to fall back asleep. This is partly due to commercially available melatonin being unregulated to the point of being proven to have between 15 and 400% variance to the dosage listed. How long should you view the morning sun? That depends and will be a matter of experimentation on your part. For most, Huberman says 2 to 10 minutes should be plenty. Now, while there tends to be enough quality light in the sky, even through dense cloud cover, certain people, such as those experiencing Scandinavian winters, may not have enough quality light to view. The first alternative recommended is simply to be outside for a much longer length of time. Another important note is that viewing morning sunlight through a window is about 50 times less effective than being outside. Now, for those thinking, do I have to stare directly at the sun? Or what if I have a retinal degenerative disorder? Never look at light that is painful to view. Do not compromise your safety for the purpose of viewing bright lights. For certain people, this may mean viewing dimmer light, but for a much longer length of time. What if you're low vision or blind? Provided you still have your eyes, you should actually still retain the neurons required for setting the circadian clock. It's not about perceiving the sun, but rather the cells receiving particular wavelengths of light. How can you wake up earlier? We have a phase delay and phase advance system in our bodies. Seeing bright light in the middle of the night makes your body think it's morning light and cause a phase delay such that we get up later and go to sleep later. Alternatively, viewing light earlier causes a phase advance such that your circadian clock causes you to wake up earlier as well as go to sleep earlier. One way of doing this, aside from eliminating late night light viewing, is implementing a system in your room such that the lights turn on 45 minutes to an hour before waking up. Even if your eyelids are closed, photons can still penetrate your cells and increase your overall total sleep time and make you go to bed earlier. What about naps? 20-minute to 1 hour naps are okay and potentially beneficial, provided you don't dip into REM sleep. Aside from naps, Huberman recommends 3 types of non-sleep deep rest, or NSDR, as a way of resetting our ability to engage in DPO processes. The 3 recommendations are meditation, yoga nidra, and hypnosis. I've linked the same 2 yoga nidra scripts as Huberman in the description. What if you're a shift worker? We'll discuss alternatives for shift workers in a future summary. Lights that don't trigger your circadian clock. Red light, candlelight, fireplaces, and very dim lights. This means these are all okay to view later in the day. Due to the eye's biology, it's also best to place lights used later in the day lower to the ground. The next podcast Huberman has is in office hours, where he answers questions people have about podcast number 1 and 2. If you have any questions about those episodes, please comment them below, and I will do my best to review Huberman's work and provide a good answer. As always, this is a surface level dive into the Huberman Lab podcast. I recommend you watch the full episode linked below. Thank you for watching. I have immense respect for Andrew Huberman, and I wanted to make these summaries because I understand that the amount of information presented can be daunting and hard to process. Despite this, I think it has immense value and deserves to be heard by the masses. I am in no way affiliated with Andrew Huberman, the Huberman Lab podcast, or any other relevant parties.